It was supposed to be just another camp assignment. Art, peace, focus. But when Ethan agreed to help Logan, he didn't expect the closeness or the storm it would start. Secrets, guilt, desire. 3 people, 1 camp, and a fire that refused to die, even after the flood. Watch out for this amazing story. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Sweet Serenity BL, where love always finds its light. The crackle of the bonfire stretched into the night, spitting sparks like restless fireflies that scattered into the dark sky. Dozens of students had gathered around the flames, their voices rising in laughter and song, the shadows of their faces flickering in warm orange light. Beyond the circle of heat, the camp stretched into rows of canvas tents and portable bunks, set against the backdrop of towering pine trees that loomed like silent guardians. The air smelled of roasted marshmallows, charred wood, and the faint sweetness of autumn. Among the crowd sat Ethan, his notebook balanced on his knees, the fire's glow catching in his eyes. He wasn't here for fun, at least, not in the same way the others were. While his classmates treated the camp as an escape, a week-long vacation filled with storytelling and stargazing, Ethan carried with him the heavy weight of responsibility. His twin brother, Daniel, lay in a hospital bed miles away, fighting through long days of weakness and quiet suffering. Every dollar Ethan earned went to Daniel's treatment. And this camp, Project 10, our competition, sponsored by the university, was just another means to an end. The winner's prize money could cover almost 2 months of medical bills. That was why Ethan had volunteered to help tutor anyone who needed guidance for their art projects. It wasn't passion, it was survival. It wasn't long before Logan approached him. Logan was his bunkmate for the camp, tall and broad-shouldered, with an easy smile that always seemed to carry some private amusement. He wasn't known for his academic dedication. In fact, most people doubted he could handle the simplest project without wandering off into distraction. Yet he leaned toward Ethan that evening with a casual shrug, his voice low enough to be almost swallowed by the crackle of fire. "Help me with this art assignment," Logan said, tilting his head. "But I've got one condition." Ethan glanced up, raising an eyebrow. "Condition?" Logan nodded, his grin widening, as if this were the most natural request in the world. "When we work, you'll sit on my lap." The words landed between them like a stone dropped into still water, rippling out in ways Ethan didn't quite know how to measure. For a moment, he thought Logan was joking, the firelight playing tricks on the seriousness of his tone. But Logan's eyes, sharp and unwavering, suggested otherwise. "Don't look at me like that," Logan added, almost laughing. It helps me focus. Keeps me from spacing out. You want me to actually learn, don't you?" Ethan froze. His instinct was to reject the idea outright. The thought of sitting on another man's lap, even in the name of tutoring, made his stomach twist with unease. The closeness, the intimacy of it, was far beyond what he'd ever considered acceptable. But then, like a cruel reminder, the image of Daniel in his hospital bed surfaced in his mind. The bills were stacking higher. The medication, the therapy, the tests, they all had price tags attached, and Ethan's bank account was a shallow well on the verge of running dry. If Logan was willing to pay him extra for this bizarre arrangement, could he really afford to say no? "What's it going to be?" Logan pressed, his voice steady but laced with challenge. "You'll get your money, and I'll get my help." Ethan swallowed hard, torn between pride and desperation. Finally, with a slow nod, he forced the words out. "Fine. But only during the study sessions, that's it." Logan's smile spread across his face like victory, though he kept his tone casual. "Perfect, tomorrow night then. After the camp activities, don't be late." As Logan walked away, blending back into the crowd of students by the fire, Ethan remained seated, staring into the flames as though they held the answers he desperately needed. His heart raced, a strange mix of dread and guilt tangling in his chest. He told himself it was just a seat, just a weird condition to secure the money for Daniel's care. Nothing more. He wouldn't let it become anything more. But across the camp, leaning against a log, Caleb watched. Caleb was Ethan's other bunkmate, sharp-eyed, quiet, but never unobservant. He had noticed the way Logan leaned in to private exchange that ended with Ethan's stiff nod. Caleb's jaw tightened as he considered it. Something about Logan's interest in Ethan didn't sit right with him, and the uneasy twist in his gut only grew stronger as the night went on. Later, when the campfire songs faded and the students scattered back to their bunks, Ethan found himself lying awake, staring at the fabric ceiling of the tent. The night was alive with the chirp of crickets and the distant rush of wind through the trees, but his mind was anything but calm. He replayed the conversation over and over, questioning his decision. Tomorrow night, he would have to sit on Logan's lap, pretend as though the closeness meant nothing while guiding him through sketching, shading, and composition. It was wrong, uncomfortable, humiliating even, yet he knew he would go through with it because Daniel needed him, because he had no choice. Because sometimes, survival meant agreeing to things that twisted you into knots, and though Ethan didn't know it yet, that single decision, the quiet nod by the fire, was the first step into a web of tension, secrets, and emotions he couldn't begin to untangle. A game was unfolding at the camp, and he was already a piece on the board. The next morning dawned bright, the forest alive with the golden light of the sun filtering through tall pines. Birds sang high above the camp, their calls echoing like nature's alarm clock. Students shuffled from their tents, stretching, yawning, and heading toward the mess area where breakfast was being served. Ethan, however, wasn't among them. He sat at the edge of the camp's clearing, notebook in hand, his gaze fixed on the distant tree line. He hadn't slept much the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, the memory of Logan's steady warmth pressed into his back, the rhythm of his breathing, and Caleb's accusing stare all replayed like a loop he couldn't escape. He told himself it was just tutoring, just money, but his body had betrayed him. His nerves had reacted to every shift, every accidental brush, every word spoken too close. That was dangerous, and Ethan wasn't about to let danger distract him from why he was here in the first place. So, when the group was dismissed later that morning to work on their art projects wherever they pleased, Ethan grabbed his supplies and made a beeline for the small wooden library at the far end of the camp. It wasn't much, a converted cabin filled with shelves of donated books, sketches pinned to the walls, and long wooden tables worn by years of use, but it was quiet, isolated, safe. For the next 2 days, Ethan made the library his second home. He set up his materials at the farthest table by the window, where the sunlight spilled in across the wood, and he poured himself into sketching. Lines, shading, strokes, each motion was a distraction, a shield against thoughts he didn't want to entertain. He told himself that if he stayed busy enough, Logan would lose interest. Maybe he'd even find someone else to pester, but Logan wasn't the type to be ignored. The first evening, when Ethan slipped into the library instead of their tent after dinner, Logan showed up an hour later. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a small grin tugging at his lips. "You hiding from me?" he asked, voice teasing. "I'm working," Ethan replied without looking up. "Working alone?" Logan strolled in, circling the table. "Not very effective, is it? You're supposed to be teaching me." Ethan finally glanced up, irritation flashing in his eyes. "You don't need me hovering over you every second. Do your sketches, I'll check them later." Logan raised a brow, as if amused by the sharpness in Ethan's tone. "Or," he drawled, pulling out a chair and sitting far too close, "you could just sit like last time. Worked pretty well, didn't it?" Ethan slammed his pencil down, jaw tight. "Logan, I'm serious. Not here, not now." For the first time, Logan's grin faltered, replaced by a flicker of something softer. Hurt? Frustration? Ethan couldn't tell. But before he could figure it out, Logan stood, shrugged, and left the cabin without another word. The silence that followed weighed heavier than the confrontation. Ethan stared down at his unfinished sketch, guilt twisting in his stomach. But he shook it off. This was better. Boundaries were necessary. He wasn't going to let Logan play games with him, or at least, that was the plan. On the third day, as Ethan returned from the library near dusk, he found Caleb waiting just outside the tent. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable, but his eyes bore into Ethan with sharp intent. "You've been avoiding him," Caleb said flatly. Ethan froze, clutching his notebook tighter. "I've been working." "Don't play dumb." Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I saw the way he looked at you, and the way you froze up in that tent the other night. He's not asking you to tutor him, he's pulling you into something else." Ethan bristled, defensive. "You don't know what you're talking about, don't I?" Caleb pressed. "Ethan, I've watched him. He doesn't chase after people unless he wants something, and it's not art he wants from you." The accusation made Ethan's throat dry. His instinct was to deny it, to dismiss Caleb's suspicions as paranoia, but the truth was, Hadn't Ethan wondered the same thing in the quiet moments he didn't want to admit to himself? "I don't care what Logan wants," Ethan muttered finally. "This is just a job, that's all." Caleb studied him for a long moment, eyes filled with something that looked almost like pity. Then he shook his head. "You're too blind to see it. But you'll regret letting him pull you in." Ethan turned away, shoving into the tent before Caleb could say more. His chest felt heavy, tangled in a mix of irritation and something he didn't want to name. Caleb's words lingered like smoke, clinging to him no matter how hard he tried to wave them off. That night, the storm rolled in, thick clouds swallowed the stars, and thunder rumbled low across the forest. Rain began to pour, hammering against the canvas tents in relentless sheets. Ethan lay in his bunk, listening to the storm's fury, trying to calm his restless thoughts. He almost drifted to sleep when the tent flap burst open. Logan stumbled in, drenched from head to toe, water dripping from his hair and clothes. "Seriously?" Ethan sat up, startled. "What were you doing out there?" Logan grimaced, peeling off his soaked jacket. "My bed's a swamp." The rain came through the flap. "I didn't notice until it was too late." He glanced at Ethan, half sheepish, half expectant. "Mind if I crash here tonight?" Ethan blinked, his mind scrambling. He wanted to say no, to send Logan back into the storm, but the sight of him shivering, clothes clinging to his skin, stopped him. The storm was too fierce. Letting him sleep in a puddle of a bed wasn't an option. With a heavy sigh, Ethan shifted over. "Fine. Just for tonight." Logan's eyes flickered with something unreadable: gratitude, relief, or maybe something else entirely. He climbed into the bunk beside Ethan, the narrow bed forcing their shoulders to press together. The rain hammered louder, drowning out the silence between them. Ethan lay rigid, heart pounding, every nerve alert to the warmth spreading where their bodies touched. He told himself it was temporary, just one night, nothing more. But as the storm raged on, and Logan's breathing grew slower and steady beside him, Ethan couldn't help but feel the boundaries he'd tried so hard to build begin to blur. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of a much larger storm. The next evening arrived faster than Ethan expected. The camp had spent the day on hikes, sketching nature scenes, and participating in group games around the lake. By the time the sun sank behind the tree line, painting the sky in deep streaks of amber and violet, Ethan's stomach churned with nerves. He tried to distract himself by helping some students mix paint for their projects, but every glance at the bonfire reminded him of the promise he had made the night before. When the final camp activity ended a group storytelling circle, Ethan excused himself quickly, mumbling something about needing to prepare sketches for his own work. His heart thudded as he walked toward the tents. The camp was quieter now, laughter and chatter fading behind him as most students lingered around the fire. Only the faint crunch of pine needles beneath his shoes accompanied him. He almost convinced himself to turn back, to forget the arrangement entirely. But then Daniel's pale face flashed in his mind again, framed by the sterile white of the hospital. The debt, the bills, the fragile strength of his twin smile. Ethan clenched his fists. He had no choice. Logan was already waiting when Ethan pushed open the flap of their tent. He was lounging casually on his bunk, a sketchpad resting against his knee, pencil tapping rhythmically against the page. The sight of him calm, expectant, and somehow too comfortable sent another twist of unease through Ethan. "You're late," Logan said, smirking. "By 2 minutes," Ethan shot back, his tone clipped. He tossed his notebook onto his own bunk and crossed his arms. "Let's just get this over with." Logan leaned back, clearly amused by Ethan's defensiveness. "Relax, you'll see. It's not a big deal." He patted his thigh with mock patience, as if inviting a child to sit. Ethan's jaw tightened. This was ridiculous. But he forced his legs forward, moving as though wading through mud. Every step felt heavier than the last. Finally, he lowered himself onto Logan's lap, stiff as stone. His posture was rigid, shoulders square, hands clenched tightly around his notebook. Logan chuckled softly, shifting slightly to balance the weight. "You're acting like I'm a bear trap," Logan said. "You'll crap up if you keep sitting like that." "I'm not here to get comfortable," Ethan muttered, flipping open his notebook. "We're here to work." But work wasn't as simple as he hoped. Every time he moved to gesture at the page, he was acutely aware of Logan's chest against his back, the warmth of his arm brushing his side. the steady rhythm of his breathing so close it was almost distracting. He pointed out shading techniques, line control, and perspective, his voice betraying the tightness of someone trying very hard to appear unaffected. Logan, however, seemed to revel in the closeness. He followed Ethan's instructions, sketching clumsy outlines with exaggerated effort. His pencil strokes were shaky, and Ethan leaned forward to guide his hand. The motion brought him even closer, his shoulder pressed against Logan's chest, and for a moment, his focus faltered. "Better," Ethan said quickly, pulling back. He cleared his throat, trying to bury the heat rising to his face. Logan's lips quirked. "See, I told you I'd focus this way." Ethan rolled his eyes. "This isn't focus, it's distraction. Not for me," Logan murmured, so low that Ethan almost missed it. Before Ethan could reply, the tent flap rustled. Caleb stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. His gaze flicked from Ethan perched on Logan's lap to the sketchpad between them, and something sharp flashed in his eyes. "Seriously?" Caleb's voice was edged with disbelief. "This is your idea of tutoring?" Ethan stiffened, scrambling for an explanation. "It's not what it looks like." Logan smirked, resting his chin lightly against Ethan's shoulder as if to test Caleb's reaction. "It's exactly what it looks like." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I knew you were up to something." "Logan, you don't need help with Art, you're just messing with him." "That's not true," Logan replied smoothly, though his grin never faltered. "I'm learning. Ethan's a good teacher." Ethan shot him a warning look, then turned to Caleb. "It's fine. I'm just helping him in the way he asked." Caleb scoffed. "Helping him? You look like you're being played. Wake up, Ethan." The words cut deeper than Ethan expected. He wanted to snap back, to insist that Caleb was wrong, but the truth was too complicated. He wasn't blind to how strange the situation was. Yet the thought of the money, the vital lifeline for Daniel, tethered him to silence. "Go cool off, Caleb," Ethan muttered, forcing his voice steady. "We've got work to do." For a long moment, Caleb just stood there, anger and concern flickering in his expression. Finally, with a shake of his head, he let the flap fall shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Logan broke it with a low chuckle. "He's protective of you." "He's just suspicious," Ethan said, though his voice lacked conviction. He tried to focus on the notebook again, pointing out a correction, but the atmosphere had shifted. Caleb's confrontation left a bitter aftertaste, one Ethan couldn't ignore. Was he really being played, or was there something more behind Logan's strange request? Logan didn't press the tension further. He went back to sketching, his pencil moving with surprising concentration. Ethan leaned forward again, biting his strokes, this time with less hesitation. The warmth of Logan's presence was still distracting, but in an odd way, it steadied him too. When they finally finished, Ethan stood quickly, almost stumbling as his legs shook from sitting so stiffly for so long. He gathered his notebook, avoiding Logan's amused gaze. "Tomorrow?" Logan asked, stretching casually as if nothing unusual had happened. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Tomorrow." He left the tent, stepping into the cool night air. The fire had burned low, embers glowing faintly in the distance. Caleb wasn't anywhere in sight, but Ethan could still feel the weight of his disapproval. He walked to the edge of the camp, staring out at the dark forest beyond, trying to convince himself he was in control. But deep down, he knew the situation was spiraling. This was no longer just about Art, no longer just about money. Something unspoken was threading itself between him and Logan, and Caleb had already sensed it. And though Ethan fought to ignore it, he couldn't escape the truth. Every time Logan's warmth pressed against him, every time that easy grin brushed too close, something inside him shifted, something he didn't want to name. The storm carried through the night like a beast unwilling to rest, but inside the tent, it was another kind of storm that kept Ethan awake. He lay on his side, rigid, staring at the shadow of rain streaks across the fabric wall. Logan's body pressed against his back, worn man steady despite the chill of damp clothes. At some point, exhaustion must have pulled Ethan under, because, when his eyes opened again, dawnlight was slipping through the cracks of the canvas. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and damp, smelling of wet earth. He shifted slightly and froze. Logan's arm was draped across his waist, their legs tangled together. Ethan could feel the slow, even breath against the nape of his neck, the rise and fall of a chest pressed firmly into his back. His pulse leapt into his throat. Panic surged, He twisted to free himself, but the movement only stirred Logan, whose eyes fluttered open. For a long second, they locked eyes, Ethan's wide with panic, Logan's heavy-lidded with sleep. Then, a slow smile spread across Logan's face. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough. Ethan shoved his arm away and scrambled upright, heat rushing to his face. This isn't." "Relax," Logan interrupted, sitting up with maddening calm. "We were just sleeping. You're the one who let me in, remember?" Ethan opened his mouth, ready to argue, but the tent flap rustled. Caleb stood there, his expression dark as storm clouds. His eyes flicked from Ethan, still tangled in the blankets, to Logan, hair mussed and shirt half clinging. The silence that followed was louder than any accusation. "You've got to be kidding me," Caleb muttered, shaking his head. "Ethan, do you really not see it? He's not here for your tutoring. He's using this to get close to you." Logan bristled, his jaw tightening. "And what if I am? At least I'm not hiding behind half-truths and pretending I don't care." Ethan's breath caught. The bluntness of the statement hit him harder than he expected. Caleb stepped forward, his tone sharp. "He's playing you. He doesn't need your help, he never did. He's stringing you along for his own amusement." The words rang in Ethan's ears. A memory surfaced: Logan's unusually steady sketches, his quick grasp at shading, the way he had claimed he could only focus if Ethan sat close. Doubt twisted in his gut. "Is that true?" Ethan demanded, turning to Logan. "Did you even need my help? Or was this some twisted game to you?" Logan flinched as if struck, then stood, facing Ethan squarely. "I didn't lie about wanting your help, but you're right, I didn't need it." Ethan's stomach dropped. The betrayal burned sharp, so Caleb was right. "You've been wasting my time." "No," Logan snapped, his voice cracking with urgency. "I wasn't wasting your time, I was trying to spend time with you. Because I like you, Ethan. More than I can explain. I didn't know how else to show it, so yeah, I pulled you into something stupid, but it wasn't a joke to me." The tent was suffocating with silence. Ethan's chest rose and fell rapidly, torn between anger and something dangerously close to relief. The admission rattled him, shook loose the truth he'd been trying to bury since the first night by the fire. Caleb's voice cut through, low and sharp. "And what about him, Logan? Did you even think about the position you're putting him in? He's got enough weight on his shoulders without you dragging him into whatever this is." Ethan blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" Caleb looked at him, regret softening his expression. "I know about Daniel. I know you've been killing yourself to keep up with the bills. You think I don't notice when you skip meals or pick up every odd job you can find. You shouldn't have to compromise yourself just to pay for your brother's care." Ethan's throat closed. He hadn't told anyone at camp about Daniel, not even Caleb, but somehow, Caleb had pieced it together. The shame, the vulnerability of being exposed, made his chest ache. Logan stepped closer, his voice quieter now, almost raw. "Ethan, if this is about money, you should have just told me. I would have helped, that's not the point." Ethan's voice cracked. "I don't need charity. I needed a way to feel like I was earning it. Not being someone's experiment." The words hung heavy. Logan's expression faltered, pain flickering in his eyes. For the first time, the unshakable grin was gone, replaced with something bare and human. "I'm sorry," Logan said simply. "I went about it the wrong way. But my feelings aren't a joke, I meant every word." Ethan turned away, his hands trembling. He thought of Daniel again, lying in the hospital bed. Of Caleb's warning, of Logan's warmth against him in the storm. Everything was tangled: fear, desire, shame, and the possibility of something more. The camp bell rang in the distance, signaling the day's activities, but inside the tent, time seemed suspended. Ethan drew in a shaky breath. "I can't do this halfway. If you're serious, then prove it. Not with games, not with tricks, with action." Logan's gaze steadied, and he nodded once. "Then I will. Starting now." The rest of the day blurred. Ethan kept his distance, needing space to breathe, but Logan didn't push. Instead, he threw himself into the group's volunteer project that afternoon, helping repair storm damage and nearby Riverside Trail. Ethan watched from afar as Logan lifted heavy branches, organized supplies, and worked tirelessly without complaint. It wasn't showmanship, it was genuine effort. When the group returned to camp, muddy and exhausted, Logan found Ethan by the fire. He sat down beside him, Close enough to be felt but not overwhelming. I talked to the camp director, Logan said quietly. There's a medical scholarship fund for emergencies. I told him about Daniel. They're going to review it. You should apply. Ethan's eyes widened. He hadn't even known such a program existed. Gratitude and guilt warred inside him. Why would you do that? Logan looked at him, earnest and unflinching. Because you matter to me, and so does your brother. This isn't about me anymore, it's about making sure you're not carrying this alone. Ethan's chest tightened, tears pricking his eyes before he could stop them. For so long, he had carried the burden in silence, afraid to trust anyone with the weight. But here was Logan, messy and complicated, yet standing by him without hesitation. Caleb watched from across the fire, his expression unreadable. Finally, with a sigh, he turned away, as though conceding that maybe, just maybe, Logan's intentions weren't as shallow as he'd feared. Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension he'd been holding for days finally loosening. He turned to Logan, meeting his gaze. You drive me crazy, he admitted softly. But maybe I don't want you to stop. A smile curved Logan's lips, gentle this time, not mocking or playful. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. The fire crackled between them, casting warm light across their faces. For the first time since arriving at camp, Ethan allowed himself to lean into the warmth not just of the flames, but of someone willing to stand beside him in the storm. And as the night stretched on, with laughter rising around the fire and stars breaking free from the clouds, Ethan realized something he hadn't dared believe. He wasn't alone anymore.